Welcome back to the Screen Love Affair podcast. Brandon, before we get going, who told you that you could sit in a chair for this episode?
Oh, sorry.
That's right. You've tuned in to listen to two heterosexual men and a bisexual woman talk about Pillion, the gay BDSM movie. Obviously, as you can tell from how handsome and chiseled my frame is, I am the Alex Skarsgård stand-in, and Brandon is definitely more of a Dudley from Harry Potter vibe.
I'm
But
Colin.
yeah, exactly. No accent work. No accent work. We'll also be covering how to make a killing in this episode, but we're kicking off with my favorite of the two movies, Pillion.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which,
Okay.
definitely, we'll get into it. Definitely not how I would have assumed the day was going to go. Adriana and I saw these together on the same day.
Yeah, back to back.
Yeah, and definitely it was super funny, at least at our Pillion screening, because there were clearly pairings of people there, like
Yeah.
together, like kind of littered throughout the theater. And yeah, like
there was
a lot
at
of
least one like group of friends who
Yeah.
like one of them actually recognized my workplace, but we won't get into that.
Yeah.
So I was wearing my work jacket and like the logo was
no.
there, but
Doxed
Yeah.
IRL.
Yeah, exactly. And then a lot of like gay pairings, and there was a lot of funny bits like related to that we'll get into once we talk about spoilers. But as the straight white man, I feel like I should lead off with my thoughts. So I thought this was really good. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know like anything other than we saw a trailer for it, I think at Cinema du Parc, and I remember looking at you, I'm like, we gonna go see that? And then it came out and we're like, all right, let's go. And I will say I was aided by substances. And enough that I think what happened was it really broke down the wall that I may have otherwise thrown up for this movie. In the same way I watched Wuthering Heights kind of like as an observational thing where I was like, I'm going to watch all these weird people in this audience react to this movie. I feel like I was really able to kind of let go and get into this to the point where, again, in the spoiler section, we'll have lots to talk about here, that I was surprising myself as we were going through.
I almost feel like you were more into it than I was, which surprised
Right.
me a little.
Right. I think that's super true. And again, surprised me. Like I didn't know anything about it. And when this started, I will say I was worried. I was in kind of me and Skinamarink at the start where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to find my way in. And then I found my way in. I got on the wavelength and had a absolute blast with this. I thought it was really funny, but like poignant by the end of it too. Like I was feeling a little bit of heartbreak. And it had so much in there, and the performances like were lights out in this movie, like unbelievably good, I thought, across the board. But anyway, yeah, I have lots more to talk about, but I think overall, like I thought this was really solid and perfect casting, kind of just a lot of checks across the board, and this really, really worked for me.
As the sub in this relationship, I don't have permission to speak yet, so I will
let
Adriana
I'll give it to
ahead of me.
Adriana, and then we'll let Brandon do it at the end, maybe.
Yeah, like you said, there were substances involved, but it wasn't like, I don't know, I feel like I would have enjoyed the movie regardless, personally. But it just kind of made the experience so much better, I thought. And when the substances kicked in was like so hilarious because it was during a pivotal scene in the woods, which we could talk about later. For me, because I took whatever it was later than Shea did. But yeah, I don't know. I think I thought it was a great tonal mix. Like you said, there was like just the right amount of humor. And then it just such a gut punch by the end. And I feel like I could understand and buy into the feelings behind the relationship, even if like on a more intellectual level I like don't really get the particular kink that they were showcasing here. But yeah, the feelings felt really universal to me. Like it's an experience that a lot of people go through, just figuring out who you are, what you want. I think tying it into that universality made it such a great experience because performance is great. Between this and the moment, it was like Skarsgård is having a big moment. I think I saw those two movies in the same week, and he's just like fantastic in both for different reasons. Yeah, go see it. I don't know. Open up your mind and your asshole and go see this movie.
On
Good,
that note, Brandon, you have
Yeah.
permission to give your thoughts.
Oh, thank you. Funny enough, I'm glad you guys all said that because I could agree with maybe 20% of that. I did not find my way in for about 80% of the movie, keeping it spoiler free. As somebody who loves heated rivalry, who cries every time he watches Brokeback Mountain, like I do love a gay romance, do not get me wrong. But I do think it was the specificity of like the BDSM biker world that I found a hard time like finding my way in and connecting to each character's desires, because they do keep it very detached intentionally. It was a lot of good intentional choices from like a filmmaking perspective, but as I think the best way to say it is like it's just a movie that's not for me. And again, I thought it would have been once I realized what the movie was. Reading the title of Pillion and thinking it was Pillion, like Papillon, like a French movie. I thought it was going to be a French art house movie. Was not that. But again, yeah, great performances. But I would say I was also skeptical of Bill Skarsgård, Alexander Skarsgård. I was skeptical of Alexander Skarsgård going into it. He's got this Murderbot show on Apple TV, and I couldn't not hear the Murderbot voice of just like, I'm a detached robot. What is human feeling? Kind of coming from this very detached man for, I'd say, about 50% of it until you get to see him more authentically and sides of that character. So I almost, like, weirdly enough, compare this to Hamnet, a movie that I really liked because of the last, like, 30% of the movie and the impact of it, but found myself for, like, 70% of the runtime being a little bit like, I see what they're doing. I'm not finding a way in. I'm not enjoying it. And again, I probably, like, as you joked, is the heterosexual white male aspect. But then I thought of that and I was like, no, like I do love gay romance. But I think specifically what I love about a gay romance is the longing and like the romance in it. And this movie, for the subject material it is, doesn't have longing or yearning. It is a very like black and white relationship as far as guidelines and rules. Which then made me pivot to think I just saw Secretary, not The Secretary, Secretary with Maggie Gyllenhaal and was it James Spader, young James Spader, big young James Spader kick in this house. We've been watching a lot of 90s slop, not slop, but 90s forgotten gems like Dreamgirl, also with James Spader. A lot of like proto 90s romance thrillers. So again, like I'm primed to want a story that has elements of again, Secretary, where it's Maggie Gyllenhaal being kind of taught how to be a submissive person to find some agency. So I'm like, okay, like if that's the story, I liked this before. If it's Brokeback Mountain, I've liked this before. Instead of cowboys, it's bikers. So in my head, once I started understanding what the movie was, because I did go in fairly blind, I was kind of looking for those elements of finding the agency or finding that romantic longing. And it's not there intentionally. So I didn't think the movie was for me. And that's a pretty obvious statement again. But yeah, I wasn't buying it until the last 30% of the movie where I finally kind of got what I wanted. Even the one scene, without spoiling anything, in the woods, that like definitely finally got some like energy out of me, because I was kind of being like, when does this pop off? You know, when does it really go full hog, so to speak, in a biking movie? So yeah, anyways, I do think like it's worth seeing. And to summarize it super quick, it is just it's a man trying to figure out what he wants in a relationship and finding another man, my Shea in this case, who teaches him through his methods to enjoy being submissive in a dom-sub relationship. And lastly, in the spoiler-free half, intelligent things I wanted to say would include Pillion, the title, is, I'm probably even saying it wrong, but Pillion is in reference to the secondary seat on a motorcycle, not the primary seating. So it's either the back or the sidecar kind of thing, which is thematic for our main character. He's definitely not the main dude, as they say in Uncut Gems, or no, as they say in Righteous Gemstones. He's not the main dude. He's definitely the sub, and I thought that was kind of a clever title because I had no idea, and there was none of that that Family Guy joke of like waiting for them to say the title, where it's like, "Oh, hop on my pillion," you know what I mean? Like they never say the title, and I wanted them to, so I know how to review this better. But yeah, I think it was
Googled
clever.
the word after and was like, "Oh, I get it."
Yeah, and then secondly, like Googling stuff out of the theater, I would say again without spoiling it. Looking up don't check my browser history, looking up the gay BDSM community around this so I could understand where I wasn't buying in. This is a better accurate kind of look into that world. Like again, comparing it to heteronormative relationships like in 50 Shades of Grey or Secretary. This is far more dominant. I almost say cruel to an extent. Like it's not the fantasy or the luxury porn of like, I'm going to spank you and call you a bad girl and hop in my Audi R8. It is similar, but wildly meaner. If you've seen the trailer, which I saw after the movie, the best moment in the trailer is that scene where the mother says, "I don't like the way you talk to my son." And Alexander Skarsgård goes, "It's not for you to like." And it's like, oh, that summarizes the movie supremely well. So check it out. It was not in a lot of theaters near me in Toronto. I really had to seek this one out. But yeah, I got value out of it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would compared to other movies I just mentioned. So go and open, but it's not going to stack up if you're used to more traditional kind of power fantasy dynamic stuff. And I don't know how to put it otherwise.
Well,
or gay longing.
I find it interesting because I really felt like I understand that at the beginning of the relationships, particularly the part of like the passion and the longing and stuff like that. But there is that kind of beat later in the movie where that becomes like much more apparent as the main character kind of like is now kind of discovering like the lines that he likes and where he wants to go. And so like I felt like kind of it was just, again, I do think for me, like without the substances, I don't think I would have been able to like find that wavelength as easy. So I really, when you came out and told me like how you reacted to the movie, I felt somewhat like expected, as in that's what I thought I would be like going in. And so I was glad that I didn't have that. And I think for me, it was really just kind of opening up because, again, that was a world like I know nothing about and like, a dynamic that I am not familiar with. And so like at the beginning, it was challenging to get it. And then, but I think like there was a point, like again later, where I was definitely like fully on board and understood that, like, because I think for me it did strike your sensibilities of like, this is inhumane. Like genuinely, it was how I reacted at the beginning, because it was so foreign to me. Like I was like his mother, and it was funny because by the end
she was
of
the
the
most
movie,
relatable.
but by the end of the movie, my arc had flipped and I was more for the ship than I was for the mom, which to me was like the biggest like testament that I think I can give the movie, was that it took me on that journey in a way that I was able to make that change just in the runtime. Like I didn't need to read about it after to understand more. Like this movie did a good enough job kind of showcasing this relationship in a way that allowed me to understand, even if I couldn't relate. And I think, we've talked about this before, like that to me is the magic of a good movie. Like I really don't like and I've said this about movies too, like this is not an attack on you, Brandon, but it's like I really don't like when I go like, this movie just wasn't made for me. A good movie can be made for us. Like Barbie was not made for me, but I got emotional at the end of Barbie. I understood the beats and what was going on, and I could connect. And I think that is sort of the difference between a great and a good movie. And I moved, like when I didn't move it when I reviewed this initially, I loved this movie. I put it in my love category. For sure. And I think that to me is kind of the biggest strength here. And again, I want to shout it out because I refer to them as character names too often when we do these, but Harry Melling, who anyone that's seen this poster will recognize him as Dudley from Harry Potter, is the main character in this movie. An
Colin.
unbelievable performance here. Like
Yeah.
genuinely incredibly solid, but incredibly risky and vulnerable in a way that I really don't think a lot of other actors would be willing to go and do that kind of stuff. And I just like I was astounded by how good he was in this. And I've seen him like the only other thing I honestly can remember him from was the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which he was also really good in, but just kind of in a smaller role. But like, yeah, this blew me away, and I think, yeah, I'm excited to dig into it. But I don't know if anyone has any other spoiler-free thoughts they want to tackle before we dive in.
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about the beats of a movie being able to kind of like pull you in and make you understand it, I was just like thinking about how I've seen this movie called a dom-com quite a bit, and I think it plays with like the structure of a typical rom-com pretty well, but just puts it in like this wildly different context than we've seen before. Like I personally
Mhm.
haven't really seen this particular kind of relationship in movies. Like I can't even remember the last time I've seen a relationship like this on the big screen, which is like crazy in itself and like really cool to see. But you kind of have the meet cute, and then there's sort of like some tension as they're still sort of getting to know each other, and then the uh obstacle of meeting the parents and like
Mhm.
going through these ups and downs, and there's like funny moments and heart and like all of it. I just thought it was really, really smart in the way it took something that I would wager like most people aren't familiar with, and just like putting it in this like very familiar structural context for people to
Mhm.
find their way in. Yeah, I don't know. Thought it was really, really well done. So
Yeah, I would say just as we verge into spoiler talk, last spoiler free thoughts I would have to push back on, like, say, even the Barbie thing. I found myself tearing up at moments throughout Barbie, and it all worked for me. Obviously, not made for me. Where this movie, I don't disagree. Like, the last 30 minutes of the movie, I was like so thrilled because I was like, finally, like, this is my way in. I just felt like it took almost the whole runtime to get me to those moments where I really feel something for the characters, or could relate on a level of longing, or relate on a level of like dissatisfaction. And I think, which we'll get into in the spoilers, maybe mild spoiler warning for this, when it does end on a bummer note, I was like, even if I didn't love the movie, I thought filmmaking wise, I'm glad we get these kind of more niche alternative stories. And it also, as a film guy, I was like, I love a good gut punch ending where the lesson learned, like La La Land, I compared it to, where it's like the lesson learned, the time together was more important than the romance paying off in a traditional way. So like, I do think there's a lot of strengths in it that I could appreciate and find at the end. It just, if it was tough for me seeing this completely sober, to be fair. I found it a little tough. And like I joked about the mom being the most relatable. Big old sensitive me was like, I don't want my son to be treated this way. This is so hard to watch. Oh my God. I want my son to be the Alexander Skarsgård, but not the Colin. Oh my God. Like I had a really tough time, uh, indulging in it in a way until the end, where I was like, that's what this is about. And I think that's a phenomenal way to make a film. I think, again, if maybe the subject matter wasn't authentically what it was, I may have been able to find it in a different sense before those moments, but just being something I couldn't relate to firsthand was tougher. So again, it wasn't, and again, like, I'm not the guy to be like, like almost the opposite of you. I was like, oh, I can't wait for the hardcore BDSM gay biker movie. That's going to be my thing. You were like, that's not my thing. I hope I can enjoy it. Where we inverted, where by the time I left, I was like, it really wasn't for me. And I was I was open armedly being like, I can't wait to see this on a Thursday night with my girlfriend and really just like yap about it. But in the end, we were just kind of like, oh, I think she liked it more than me a bit. And her one criticism was, again, we're in the spoiler bit here, that crazy scene in the woods, which we can dive into. That was what she was like, I just wanted more of that. Like, if they weren't going to have an incredibly immediately connective love story, go more over the top with this kind of like subculture. And I did think that was a fascinating element of subcultures, where Colin doesn't just find a man or find a new lifestyle, he finds a new community. And I think that was part of the heartbreak at the end, when even the bikers are like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know where he is. And we'll get to that eventually, but there are some changes from the novel this is based off of that I thought were more thought provoking and fascinating when you've watched the movie. And there's some kind of loose threads there that change up. And also, novel to book, spoiler half here, that meet cute at the bar where that leads them to a Christmas Eve alleyway pseudo sex scene, in the novel. I'm so glad we're past the 20-minute mark so I can say the word grape. In the novel, he's full on graped in the alleyway. It's like almost a sex crime in the alleyway, not like a cheeky blowjob or whatever. It's actually gruesome in the novel. And that was kind of like the transition of the character going down the rabbit hole of like, maybe I do need to be treated like rougher and worse. Where in this movie, it was a little more of that kind of like the emotional, like, shut up, do what I say, which is like more palatable to all audiences. But in the book, it is a little like a lot more crueler at aspects. And when I was reading the community subreddit around this kind of movie, that's what a lot of people were saying, was the movie actually kind of made it more palatable, which I think was a good idea, because I was on the verge of being able to like find my way in. But yeah, in the book, it is a little bit more brutal of a love story, which I think, again, when you talk about taking things to 11, there may have been room for that. Like, the scene in the woods was both my girlfriend and I's favorite part in the early half of the movie, because we were kind of waiting for it to be crazier, especially when they established the biker gang showing up for that one party that Colin had to like hostess. I thought that was fun, seeing like, the assless chaps and waiter fetish gear. I was like, okay, cool. We're going somewhere new. That's not just going to be these two dudes the whole time having moments. We're actually going to like meet his friends, see his community, see his kind of world better. And that was, again, a voyeuristic element I found a little bit of a way in, but was still like wondering where the substance would kick in. And it did all towards the end for me. Yeah, I'll get to more book changes as we get into the ending later, but that's kind of like the off the cuff stuff as we're now in spoiler territory. I just kind of want to air.
I am kind of with you. Like, I do think it would have been cool to explore a bit more of the friend group and like those dynamics in the subculture, but I almost feel like that's just not what the movie. That's not
Totally.
where the movie's focus was, right? And
Yeah.
so we only got it in bits and pieces.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do paint a little bit of a picture too. Like, I think a strong scene that's very understated is when Colin is talking to the other submissive guy who's dating like the bike leader, who's a better sub than Colin in this world. Like, he's got that little jealousy beat. The moment when they're moving the table and he's like, oh yeah, I found it really tough when he said like kissing was off the table. And it's like, you got to, if you're going to be a professional sub, you got to set better ground rules so you don't sacrifice your own happiness in the long term. And at first I was like, oh, what a weird conversation. But in the context of the whole movie, I was like, oh, that was a really smart scene, because that's kind of him learning not about this subculture, but about being more of a submissive in general, finding his new identity. Again, in The Secretary, her finding her identity was like central to the movie and was like throughout kind of pieced together. But in this, it's almost like the revelation with the audience is his at the end, where he's like, oh, I really love this man, but I'll know myself better. So again, it's just like the pieces were all there. It was just end heavy. And again, not a bad call either. Just, again, I don't think I had the connective tissue to be there. So,
Well, I think for me, the thing, like, all of the, like, yeah, I would push back a little bit. Like, I understand why I guess you'd be intrigued, because it is an interesting, like, group dynamic, we could say. And so
group
I
dynamic.
understand sort of the instinct, but for me, like, I don't think about that scene, which to me, again, is shocking. Like, there's a lot of surface level, if you just saw that clip in isolation, that you can just be like, wow, that was kind of crazy and out there and whatever for a movie. But again, the fact that I'm sitting here thinking back of that and thinking about the actual emotional core and what that scene led to for their relationship, that blows me away. Like, I can't believe that, like, in that beat I wasn't thinking about all those other things. I couldn't believe how this was such a significant stepping stone in their relationship. And like I think the interesting part to where you and I like diverge and our experience change, and now that we're firmly in spoilers, was the scene where they finally have dinner with the parents. And I was full on being like, Mom, you're a bitch. Leave them alone. You don't get it. And
No,
I
I was the
had
opposite.
no, but see, I like totally flipped, and I think that to me is what, again, is if you get into that wavelength, which again, like you said, you guys struggled to get into the first, most of the movie. By that scene, I could not believe that I was that unsympathetic to the dying mom character, that
Yeah.
I was like, you're a fucking asshole, Mom.
I was like, let her die
you
happy,
don't
bro,
get it.
please.
No, like I
It's
was
so sad.
totally, because like again, and I think this is where the movie, like again, you saying it, where the book differed at the beginning. Like I think if you do something like that, it's harder to overcome.
For a movie
And,
especially,
and
yeah.
yeah, and like again, for me, where I was like, oh, I don't get this at all, and I thought that was like, oh my God, that's so mean. But like, by that is a lot different to, you can win me back from that, like this movie did. And I think, like, again, that's to me where this kind of became like a super valid point of like, I understood where his mom was coming from. Absolutely. Because I was there 45 minutes ago. But by that point, like, I understood the dynamic and the balance of this, and like, not that this wasn't just sort of like, it wasn't dehumanizing in that way. Like this was a real relationship, and this was how that, like for Skarsgård's character, that's what this, like that's the
That's
what
what it's all
love
about.
looks like to him in
Yeah.
this context, and finding that. And another thing I wanted to push back was, you called this a downer ending, and I thought this was the most like a classic example of a bittersweet
Yeah. Like La
moment,
La Land.
because yeah, you wanted more of like, you're like, like their relationship, for that to be kind of sort of not left unresolved, because it's clear sort of what happened, but like feeling this sort of like, what I missed most was like a lack of closure of like an addressing, because, and I thought, to the movie's credit, I didn't want that. It just was like, it was that feeling of longing, because the movie gives you that intentionally, that feeling that we didn't get this. Like they share the look, and he is on top in that moment, and that shatters it all. Like I
Chills,
cannot
bro. Yeah.
believe how effective that was, and then to immediately go from that to his absence, like the power again in the performances, that everything I needed to understand was conveyed in the look. And then
Silent moments.
I'm
Yeah.
getting like chills right
yeah,
now just thinking the close
Yeah.
up on
Same.
his
Effective.
eye, on Skarsgård's eyes, like
it
you
was
see it all just like written there in his face.
astonishing. And I totally understand, because again, like I could almost project on you, Brandon, how I would have perceived that. And that whole date that they go on that leads up to that moment is again, and like, I'm not saying this dismissively, is the normal date. This is what most people that if they watch this movie would see, would understand the dynamics and that relationship, and it's more traditional and conventional. And so it becomes, and what we, again, like even if I understood their relationship, this is the first time in the movie where I was like, oh, like I felt that connection for them. I didn't just understand it, I felt it. And I think to have that now be like, and
Yeah.
that's also what ruins this dynamic.
No, same
And
here.
for him to empower at the end, he has those lines. He knows what he wants. He knows his deal breakers. And the next relationship will be better for him because of the experience he had. Like, yeah, it's in the traditional sense where like, you want your two main characters to end up because you spent all this time together. But that wasn't, what this was. And I think, yeah, like I just was baffled. Like when the credits hit, I could not believe how moved I was by the whole
Yeah.
experience. And again, like for all of the context, like I was shocked when the parent scene was happening, which by the way, I kind of glanced over part of that. one of the best awkward cringe scenes of all time. Like how uncomfortable I felt. I'm just like, I'm like, oh my God, this is catastrophic. And like when they're like, hey, let's just keep eating, or like, no, let's not talk about that. Like
The dad was so supportive of everything, and
right.
even in the end when he's helping him try to find him and stuff, I was like, oh man, like that would be me to my son if I was that guy. And that added to the heartbreak of like,
Yeah.
this poor boy who just learned to love in the way he needed to is now denied it. And I don't mean to cut off, but when you're talking about it, I agree with you completely. But when you're like, well, what'd your girlfriend and you argue about after the theater? I said it was so strong in that last 30 minutes where you finally get what in screenwriting is called a false tone collapse. You see a character who's behaved one way and set up all these guidelines, have a private moment, that private day where they can just be themselves. And it was so fulfilling as an audience member. For that to be undercut at the end, again, bold choice, great choice, gut punch. But me personally was so devastated that when I was thinking about this, I was like, that's like saying to your kid, hey, who wants to go to Disneyland? And they finally get in the car and they go to the dentist. I was like, oh my God, he gave him everything he and I wanted the whole time just because he knew it was over. It was like taking your kid out for like ice cream and hot dogs, having a great day, and then abandoning him the next day. I was like, oh
Okay,
my
but hold
God,
on,
that hurt
hold
me
on,
so
hold on.
bad.
I don't think that was the intent of what happened.
Okay.
So I don't think he's like, we're going to take a day off. And I firmly believe, and again, this could be the wavelength of the substances or how into this, but I'd be curious, Adriana, your take on this too. But all was going great until the very end when they wrestled
He was on
and
top.
Colin won. And like won, not like he didn't, it wasn't like a real fight, but he was on top. The dynamic had inverted and that broke. You can't go back from that. Everything else, I think they could have gone back from that. And that's what I mean about like the craziness of this moment to me,
Yeah.
that like in the moment, I did not need like, again, further understanding or context or someone else to say it. I understood that him being now submitted down, looking up at his sub, I like shattered it. It broke it from there. And I think to me, what I took was that was the moment that ruined it. And that's why that look is everything, because it wasn't just like, I hope you've enjoyed this. You've like, now
We're
I'm
done.
leaving as
Yeah.
planned. It was more, this is over. I can't go back from this.
I can't look you in the eye anymore.
Yeah. And left. So that was my read on it. I'm curious where
I
yours
find that,
was.
really interesting. And I mean, I could be totally off here, but the way that I read that was not that it was because the dynamic had shifted. Like, I think if you're in that kind of like ownership dynamic, like there are boundaries. Like you can say like, we're having a day. It's like when he breaks down, he's like, no, like, come on, sit down, have some pizza. Like
Sit in the
you
bed.
can. Yeah, come sleep in
even
that.
the way
like,
he feeds him the pizza backwards, that was fucked.
Yeah, well, but just like, it's not that the dynamic shifted or flipped that they wouldn't ever be able to go back to it. For me, that moment was that the emotions got too real. Like he was getting too, he was showing too much of himself. Cause like the whole movie, Skarsgård is he has these very, very strong boundaries. And to me, like it was very bittersweet, the ending, but I think it's also, this is like a classic first love story. And like everyone goes through that where you like, it's so intense. The feelings are so heightened and you fall so hard and do so many things. And in some ways, like, do a disservice to yourself even, because it's clear by that point that Colin does have certain things that are will become boundaries for him. Like he needs to have a day off. He can't just do it all the time. He needs certain things that he wasn't getting from Skarsgård. I fucking keep forgetting his name. Ray. And
Ray, great biker name.
Yeah. And so I think ultimately they were just, as much as they learned and grew from each other, especially Colin, I think ultimately it just wasn't compatible, and that was because Skarsgård was too closed off emotionally. Ironically, he was too emotionally tight. Like it just, and then
Did
that
they make butt plugs
break
for that?
break it, but yeah, but
You need an
breaking
emotional butt plug and loosen
down
up.
breaking down the walls and like I don't know, just the something in the emotion on his face. It was like he just couldn't do it anymore. To me, it didn't have so much to do with the wrestling and just the flipping of the dynamic, but just that whole day, like getting too close on an
Yeah.
emotional level. Yeah.
To add to that point, and also like I think Shea's theory is the most beautiful one, and cynically I have almost the inverse, which I think adds to your point, Adriana, when you said Skarsgård was getting too seeing our main character Colin get too close and being too reactive, too emotional, losing the dynamic. The first like crack a white monster hell yeah moment that I really like genuinely was like hell yeah, so jazzed for was like the fallout from the funeral where he doesn't even come, he's locked out, and then he gets pissed off and he steals Alexander Skarsgård's bike. And I think this is in my head canon, why mine's superior is because it does the namesake of the movie. He literally takes control of his life and his relationship. He goes from the peon, the passenger seat of the bike, to riding it. He steals it, he drives off. He's now echoing that feeling of freedom that initially he kind of clocked on the highway, passing that car. He's like in our Crime 101, he's now speeding through traffic. He's in the fast lane. He's in control for the first time. He's found his agency. It was so clear and breathtaking to me when he stole the bike that I'm like, that was the moment for him that he was able to find his agency after being kind of like repressively learned and beat down emotionally to conform. And I thought that was so beautiful. And that's when I started buying in. I'm like, finally, it wasn't like the longing that I was looking for, but it was maybe the agency of the character. And when that scene happened, he finally established his agency by doing that crazy stunt. I was like, okay, here it is. This is going to cause things to change. And sure enough, it's the next day where he's like, let's have a day off. And I was like, yes, yes. And then when the ultimate payoff is like, again, the Disneyland comparison of like, I'm going to take this old boy, this old dog out to the shed, but for one last like walk before I take him out back and shoot him, I'm going to give him everything he's wanted and the audience has wanted. So in my mind, my head canon is that stealing the bike did cause a shift and it was a big moment for both of them. But I think that was what Shea's moment was of the wrestling moment. That was stealing the bike. Off screen, he was like, it's too much for him. I should never have done this. And that's when he made the choice, like, I'm going to give him one perfect day and then I will conscientiously end this because I know he would never leave. You know, I've conditioned him now. So I'm going to put him out of his misery and I will remove myself from his life. But he gave him one last amazing day, which to me added so much to that heartbreak. And I was so aghast. And if, again, not like I'm a novelist, I just read the subreddits. In the book, he does the same thing to an extent. He tells the biker gang to like, he's around. He just tells the biker gang to not let them know, like ice him out of the community. So when he's going around the end and the biker's like, oh, I don't know, man. In the book, he's around. He's just told them to like shoo him away. So that's really sad. But also in the book, he tells the biker gang what's going on. He's like, I'm going to break up with this guy and ghost him. And just tell him I'm not around. I'm going to like take some time. And they're like, yeah, man, no problem. And then in the book, the reader knows he dies. Like Alexander Skarsgård's character in the book apparently like does everything we saw, but then tells the biker gang to shoo him away. And he goes on one last ride or like just leaves. He's upset and he gets in some horrific crash and dies. So the biker gang is effectively lying to our character saying like, we don't know where he is. He's not happy, alive and well. He's just not around. But then the gang themselves eventually are like, oh my God, what happened? Like he's dead. And they can't tell him. His last wish was to tell Colin that he doesn't want to see him anymore. So they ice him out. But so it's like his dying wish was to make sure he ends up alone in a way. So like there's a lot more cruelty and finality in the book, which when you, I guess, find that out after, like I did reading the subreddits and the community forums and all that, it adds to the actual ending where, you know, when he has that shot through the window of the car where, you know, it's his dad watching him go talk to the bikers and have no luck, like tracking down Alexander Skarsgård. Part of my headcanon is like, is that what happened? Did he go off and die after telling the bikers he's going to ghost this guy for real? So that added to layer of tragedy. Again, it's all headcanon. It's not shown, but I think what was shown in the movie was really effective. I just thought the moment happened when I finally was like, hell yeah, steal the bike, take your agency, get off the pillion, and take control of your life. And then that's when I thought the pivot happened personally. But I love your version of it, because I think that makes me allow myself to love Alexander Skarsgård genuinely for that day, as opposed to heavily resent him for giving
Yeah,
him one nice day.
I don't think it's a fair read of the movie, at least again as I experienced it, to suggest that he did that day as kind of like, I'm going to give you all you want and then fucking abandon you. Because I think that undermines the actual relationship again, which I don't think the movie wants us to do. I think, like the moment you're talking about is a pivotal switch, but what it is it's the first time, like you said, he is now like, he's like, okay, I'm not just like pussyfooting around my boundaries. He freaked out, he lashed out, and
Yeah, he's kind of just acting out,
yes,
out
these
of
are going to
emotion,
be,
grief.
yes, yes. So he's very like, there's a lot of things charged there, but definitively, absolutely, that becomes like, we know now this isn't just an ask of him. Can we take a day off? Like, he's going to want this. And I like, again, I think
He changed
to
the
what
contract.
sort of, but he like, yes, he basically was like, I'm coming for a renegotiation. And Skarsgård, I believe, really did try, and I think that was, to me, the different
I
read
hope
there
so.
is, I don't think, like, again, like, I understand the book and whatever else, but like, you have to, I really don't like considering any of these other things in terms of like trying to read the movie. What did the movie show us and what didn't it? I think, again, the main thrust of this movie being that, like, whether he's alive or dead at the end is almost irrelevant. The point is that, Harry Melling's character now, like, has his identity and like, has that growth. And, Skarsgård, for the purposes of the movie, is not just like a utility to figure that out, but like, he's a chapter in his life. And that's kind of, I guess, where this movie specifically sets. And I think, yeah, I like all of those kinds of points, because I think it's like, these aren't necessarily like disconnecting threads. And I think, like, your point, Adriana, even like, it was funny too in that moment of like, when they're doing the singing thing and they ask the old ladies. It's funny that I, as an audience member, was almost feeling like Harry Mulling's character's like trepidation of like, what,
Are you
like,
for
when
real?
he's like, yeah, like, because is this him like alphing up again a little bit, or is this just like, you know what I mean, like, yeah. And so like, I was nervous about that bit, and I thought that was just all really cleverly done. And again, like, was like, again, just that heartbreaking scene, that whole kind of like final day date sequence up until they run and end up on that hill was like masterful stuff, just masterfully done. And I
Agreed.
think,
Yeah, completely.
yeah, just conveys so much there. And yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton more to really add to that. Like I said, I think I definitely want to revisit this without the added substances, just to see, like, on that second watch, like, there's been a lot of, I'd say, varying things I've read since about like oversensitivities on the community side, and is this like a fair thing? And I, like, all I'll say to a lot of that is, this is one example of a relationship, and that exists in this community. And this movie even shows us again a different sort of like completely different, frankly, version of this, where in that woods scene where there's like the older guy or whatever, that he's got the cane, and like they kiss, like that dynamic is totally different, not totally different, but much different than the one we kind of experienced.
Same world, different
through
rules.
Exactly. And
it
so,
expands
like,
it minimally but effectively, and I really appreciate it
Yeah.
filmmaking wise.
I think it's unfair for people to put expectations on, like, that this movie has the sole responsibility of completely defining the various ranges of this kind of relationship, and like kind of putting more. No, this was really a specific movie about two specific people, or even, I would say, contend more, one specific person who meets someone else who is part of a larger community, and how those things all kind of help sort of mold and imprint on Colin throughout the movie. And I think at the end of the day, this really is about one person, and the connections and things that he makes along the way, and um, yeah, like, by the time the credits hit, like, I was just kinda, like, blown away by, like, I thought how effective that was and how good that was, as a just a single moment, but again, how, like, the biggest accomplishment for me was I was like, "Mom, you're being such a bitch, leave them alone, let them live their lives." I thought
Yeah.
was a wild, wild pivot to me that I never thought I was gonna make.
Just to add to that super quick too, my girlfriend's mom has like died of cancer early in my girlfriend's life. And so for that scene, I thought she would be like me, let the mom like feel like her son's taken care of and loved, but she felt like you in that scene being like, it was kind of hard to watch because I agreed more with the character being like, stop embarrassing me, even though she firsthand knows what that experience and that grief is like. But I came out and we had this big heart to heart after, because she was like, oh, you don't like it because you're not part of the community or whatever. I'm like, no, like if that was my son, I would feel so saddened to know that his first romance was this kind of tragic, bittersweet thing. So it was, and she was like, "You're going to be a great dad. You'll be the dad driving him to the biker bar to find Alexander Skarsgård." I'm like, "I will be, thank you." But I was very, very much shocked that even she, who we call it like dead mom movie syndrome, where every character has a mom that died off screen to make them more empathetic, and she's like, "Come on, man, like that's my story. Get off of it." So this was closer to home for her, like especially when we saw that one movie with Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield in the Austin Film Festival, and she looked at me like in the opening 5 minutes was like, "What are we seeing?" I'm like, "I'm so sorry. I did not tell you this was a movie about a beloved mother dying from cancer, leaving her kids behind." She's like, "Fuck." So yeah, anyways, I can't say more. I think the movie broke my heart really effectively. So as like a cinephile, I applauded and loved it. I just, as a person, I found it really hard to get into. And that's why I say not for me. Not because it's the subject matter, but just because I think it's a phenomenal movie. But emotionally, I was conflicted at best and a little uninterested near the beginning. No immediate buy-in, which is not a bad thing, but great film. Just, I don't think it was for me, even though I wanted it. I had expectations of matching other love stories and heteronormative love stories and other, gay longing stories like Heated Rivalry or again, Brokeback Mountain. Scenes where it's like, I can't quit you, Ellis, like they're arguing about how they're ruining each other's lives. I tear up every time because like that is so, anyways, but yeah, that's all I could say about this. I'm releasing
Um,
myself here.
I just wanted to say, like, I love so much that we had such different interpretations of that
Mhm.
Yeah,
ending
me
and
too.
just of the movie too, like different experiences. I think that just speaks to how rich a movie it is. But I also really quickly wanted to go back to something you said, Shay, about some of the criticism maybe, and like this is not supposed to represent the whole community. And I think
Mhm.
that's true. It's very like on point. Like this is just one relationship, and every single relationship, every two people that come together have their own dynamic, their own alchemy, whatever. But I think the problem, and this is something that like the gay community more broadly has like had to deal with a lot, is that because the representation is so small, it kind of ends up inadvertently becoming a stand-in for the whole community, like,
Mhm.
because there aren't enough of these stories being told, it ends up kind of carrying that weight of, like, this has to speak for everyone, even though it shouldn't. But all that to say, like, let's get more stories
Yep.
like
Make
this.
your own.
Yeah.
Totally. I think it's a huge strength. I felt that too. I was like, oh, I'm the one that loves a gay story, gay romance, and then instead I got gay heartbreak, which I wasn't ready for. But in my head, in my limited dialect of the understanding of communities, I was like, this is really good for what it was. And again, that's the not for me comment, being like, just like if you're a part of the community in a different aspect, being like, oh, this doesn't represent everything. It's like in my case, I think whatever I understand as the community or that subgenre of movie didn't meet the expectation from what I knew. So I'm glad it's broadening horizons and yeah, stories like this are being told, being released, and actors like Alexander Skarsgård are risking enough to do that kind of movie and be a little more art house and daring. And
Bearing it
yeah,
all.
yeah,
Well, and I think what we can confidently say is we can dismiss all of Brandon's opinions because his real issue was the movie was that the parents, the mom and the dad, were in a great, healthy, long relationship, and no divorce and no parental trauma was passed
Yeah,
on.
they owned a
That
house in the
that ruined the
UK.
whole thing.
Those boomers, like they were so accepting of their queer son, but they had a house, so I hate them.
But speaking of
Hot
parental
boys.
problems
Oh,
and hot boys, I guess too.
let's go,
How to
Glenn
make
Powell.
a killing. I'm gonna be super quick on this one because I thought this was fine. I thought it was a little mid for me, which I'm like incredibly disappointed to be here saying because I love Glenn Powell. The moment I saw him in Top Gun, I was like, oh yes, I was Team Glenn Powell from that day forward, and I just was like, he's just been on a run of like fine stuff, like I thought
Yeah.
Hitman was fine. I thought, what was it, like Anyone But You or whatever the hell he was in, the rom-com was a fine enough rom-com. Like these aren't movies that I
Running
would
Man,
yeah, like that
not
I
great.
didn't dislike, but I have not liked either. And he's just on this cool run, but the good news is his next movie's with J.J. Abrams, so I'm sure it'll be a fucking masterpiece. But no, I thought this was fine. I thought there were some solid beats about it. I didn't find a way in on this. I just didn't really care about anything that was really happening here. I thought Glenn Powell's character was like oddly distant in terms of like how I felt with him to the audience. Like they set him up to have this sort of like unfair treatment in life and his mom passing away and being an orphan. But I was like, something about it, like there just felt like there was this wall where I could just never really I was never really rooting for him in a significant way, other than passively because he's our main character in Glenn Powell and you want to root for him. But I don't know. This was to me, I think mid. I think most people would probably enjoy it more. I think I'm probably more on the negative side on this one, but yeah, I mean, I really don't have a ton to dig into on this, but seeing as I don't get to hand it over to Brandon anymore because he has too found his hard stances and lines, I'll just kick it to Adriana instead for her take.
I really liked it. I don't think it was like amazingly good. Like it could have, I don't know, there could have been more like energy, more pizzazz, like more whatever, but I thought it was like very, very solid. And I think it's unfair to lump this in with movies like The Running Man or Anyone But You or whatever. Like I do think it's like a step above. Like it was very well shot. I thought it was smartly written. Um Again, nothing like almost like Crime 101, like nothing we haven't seen before, and especially in the commentary, like it's I feel like this is topic that's been very, very prevalent in the last like few years, like just skewering ultra rich people and trying to kind of satirize that world a little bit. Um but yeah, I don't know. I had fun with it. I thought it was smart. Well done. It looked great. So that's kind of, yeah, it's kind of where I land on it.
Amen to that. Honestly, you kind of took most of what I was about to say. I thought this movie was really well shot and paced in a way. And again, like I was hinting at in our last discussion, I've been on a huge run of like 90s movies forgotten to time on Tubi. Shout out to Tubi for keeping like blockbuster quality VHS movies alive. I feel like this movie lands as it was marketed to me, the viewer, pretty well. Again, I wouldn't compare it to The Running Man. I really do feel like The Running Man was, much more like box office slop, where this felt like it had a bit more intentionality to it. And the key difference, I would say, is visually. I really like, again, as somebody seeing a lot of 90s movies lately, just on a complete run of like early James Spader, stuff like that. It looks like a 90s movie at times. And I mean that in a good way, where You have some lighting choices and some dirtier frames that feel like the highlights are a little blown out. It's more dramatic. If this was
The
shot
lighting
with
was
like,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
it had a vibe. It had a vibe, which is more than you can say a lot about modern Hollywood movies that are kind of shot like iPhone portrait mode, where everything is. A guy I work with, because I work in set deck, he's always like, "Oh, don't worry, dude. It's a DBSF, deep background soft focus. Like when you address a library and all the books are just out of focus anyways. Who cares if it says Canada Encyclopedia in this New York mansion?" So I thought having a movie like this where it kind of lived in the world better and felt like a movie coming from a different time period where this would have been more successful. Like, and again, I think it's hard not to compare the marketing and the vibe of the movie to something like the Fantastic Mr. Ripley or Catch Me If You Can. I know that's a hot button to bring up. That movie is such high praise, but it had like a bit of an American Psycho meets Fantastic Mr. Ripley meets, again, Catch Me If You Can. It's a guy who's outclassed, working his way back in. And I do think narratively or story wise, it did have like some beats, like you said, the luxury porn element where it's like, let's just lampoon the rich, eat the rich. I get kind of sick of that message. Even if I agree with it, it's like, I'm so tired of that being character development. And this movie's not free from those criticisms. But I did think like the story structure and the finale where you get the meeting between Glenn Powell and his grandfather and all that, like there was a lot of like rags to riches fun to be had in this. It felt a little bit like the movies like I won't compare it to Goodfellas, but like you follow a character who's narrating his ascent into doing criminal activities to get what he feels he's owed in life. And much like Crime 101, where I was like, oh, I love a guy just trying to figure out when he has enough in life, and I think that theme for me personally really hits. Similar to Crime 101, if the romance interest says you'll have it, you have enough, you're just lying to yourself because you love the illusion of more. And I think the theme's maybe more concrete explored in this, even if it is a bit more surface level. But yeah, I think the marketing to, again, the stylistic choices, both visually and narratively, does feel like a very classic, like 90s kind of criminal comedy, rags to riches. It's a very light watch. Like I could recommend this far more than Pillion to the average viewer, somebody who's not a cinephile or part of a community. I think this is a good popcorn movie and like a fun watch. Like put it on a date night. I don't think anyone's gonna find it boring or drag out. And again, Glenn Powell, like every time we review a Glenn Powell movie, if the movie's a bit subpar, Glenn Powell carries a lot of it. Just watching him act and be this handsome man, I think that does enough. They don't have a Glenn Powell ab scene. Didn't need it, but I did like the dynamics. I like the kind of secondary antagonist of his original like high school crush or whatever, like a middle school crush, coming back in, being duplicitous. Some of it did feel a little bit sloppy, like story-wise inconvenient, like the fact that he can just get like a Fortune 500 stockbroker job on nepotism. It's like, that's the comedy, like that's how nepotism works. But you're also kind of like, well, that was really easy, and I think the general audience, me included, was like, I would stop here. Like this is a good point to hop off the wave of crime you're committing, like because like your life's good now, dude. So yeah, I don't know. I had some mixed feelings, some criticisms, but I think overall the movie washed over me in a way where I was like, found my way in, really like Glenn Powell, and the vibe of it was like a classic 90s movie, which I've been watching a lot of, where it's some goated up, white boy in a suit, making his way, making a killing. And I just was like, oh, this is for lack of a better term, and I'll wear my hat here with pride, this is such like a white boy movie. We're like, hell yeah, cool. This guy's making a killing, living in New York, doing all these things. He's the main character. He's got main character energy, and it's not complicated or overwhelmingly rich in themes. And I think that's fine. Like this was an accessible movie, and I found my way in. I'm really glad it's paired here with Pillion, because it is like the antithesis of that, in a good way. Like I could appreciate stuff about Pillion, but adding that same lens of finding a way to praise it higher than like popcorn Glenn Powell movie is just like, yeah, the vibe of it was super 90s, and it does evoke like, the tropey main character narrating his descent into crime to get what he wants. It's tropey as hell, but I didn't mind it. I think it's a good review.
Listening to you guys talk actually makes me like the movie less, and I don't And I don't mean that in like a mean way to you guys. It's just making me think more about what I thought about the movie. And like my problem is it's so derivative of so many other things and does nothing else to be very exceptional. Like I watched completely unrelated, but I remember bitching to Adriana about this voiceover narration of chronicling my story, and like we got to start at the beginning and remember this is a tragedy, and like
I bet you're
all
wondering how I
this
got
going on.
here.
Right. And so like I found that kind of as a plot mechanism, like just kind of a bit of an eye roll.
Oh, I did hate that too. I forgot all
But
about
it
that.
was but one of the things, so I had just rewatched last weekend The Gentleman. The Guy Ritchie movie, Matthew McConaughey, like a loaded cast with that movie. And it's also a similar narrator. He's like, let me tell you a story, and he's got it doing all this kind of stuff. And I realized that like so much of that is carried by, they play with it like he's telling him a story, like the way that he's setting up, he's not just doing a priest confessional, like there's plot reasons for that conversation to be happening, but it's also carried so much by the performances of like everybody in that. Hugh Grant,
Oh yeah, classic.
he is so fun is as the delivery of that story, and I felt like that was so much more interesting. And it's like everything you kind of said about like, well, from that piece or The Talented Mr. Ripley, like it reminds me of so many other things and does nothing else to be like, yeah, but this one does this part super well, and I really think it stands out for that. Like I can't say that I loved Glenn Powell in this. Like he was fine. He was fine. And I feel like where I'm coming down on this movie a little bit is like I like, again, I do agree that I think more people would like this. Like if you were to watch it, like I don't think, like I didn't dislike it in that sense, but to me, this is just sort of a mid movie that is admittedly like looks a lot better. But even then, I'm like, to what end? Like, the shots look nicer, yes, but it elicited nothing really out of me. It didn't make me feel any particular way. It wasn't so nice that I just was in constant sort of awe of the state of the movie. And I guess, like, that to me is really kind of like mid plus, I guess. Like it's better than, and I think I said this in my Letterboxd review, this is probably a better movie than most movies that I give this score to. But I couldn't help but shake this feeling that I just like, yeah, like it like there was nothing for anything that I kind of liked about it. There was another thing that I just like I disliked about it, and but by and large, yeah, it's inoffensive. Again, I am so tired of the skewering the rich. Like again, I don't. Again, which like is irritating because it's again like I have no sympathy for them. Like they're such an easy group to lampoon, but in the same way, it's just been done to death the last few years.
Bust
and
a
I'm
gut
just
laughing at the rich frat boy dying on the boat, hungover from an extensive cocktail
well, but
of drugs
to
and
me, the
alcohol.
thing is like it's the extremity of that. Like if you're going to do something that's done a million times, like carry that. And I think like that we saw the trailer for the sequel, but like where the rich people hunted her in the first movie, it was like
Yeah.
Ready or Not.
Yeah. So like that to me, like dial it to 12 and have that sort of extreme beat. And the closest we get to that is the scene near the end. And it's super tame and like it doesn't have any like crazy beats to it. And so like it feels shocking maybe if you've never seen anything else like that. But again, like we saw a trailer before this movie that had a much more interesting showing, like sequence of rich people and hunting on a rich mansion grounds. Like it just, and I couldn't help but compare it to that. And I'm like, oh, this is so much less interesting.
To come to the movie's defense a little, and maybe I'm just like feeling like I don't know, like I wanted to like the movie a little bit more than I really did, but I do think I don't know, I think it's interested in a smaller idea than what you're kind of getting at. Like you're saying take it to 11 to make that interesting, but I think really secretly this is like a sort of fable-like story that's, like, hiding a very small idea, and to me, it's the scene when he's on the date with, like, his cousin's, like, girlfriend that he starts dating after he kills the cousin, and she's just, like she's talking about how, like, no one dreams small and, like, 'cause, like, we're not taught to do that. I think that's, like,
There's a
the
value in
thesis
dreaming
of the
small.
movie. Like, his whole life, this kid has been dreaming about this fortune because that's what he was taught to do. He was told that it was his, and then, more broadly, that's what the American dream is about, right? It's about
Mhm.
becoming rich. It's about becoming the 1%, getting what's yours, what you're entitled to. But really, like, you don't need that. And it's very heavy-handed. Like, it's not treading new
Not
ground. I'm not
subtle,
trying to
but yeah.
say that. Like, it literally ends with the shot of the mansion gates closing while you hear, prison gates. Like,
Yeah.
the real prison was getting rich and being trapped with a crazy woman. Like, there's not a lot of subtlety here, but I do think that idea at the core of it that was the thing that made the movie a little more interesting to me, and again, this is probably just me overcompensating in my brain, but I go back to, John Patton Ford's first movie, Emily the Criminal, which again was this really interesting, small scale, like, crime thriller about a woman, like, trying to get ahead, and there's again, in that movie too, there's a very, like there's a single scene that sort of distills the essence of the movie, um, and it's really about that class struggle. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't totally successful in everything it was trying to do, and was too derivative and heavy-handed. But I did think the movie did enough that was, like, interesting to give me something to chew on. So
Yeah, and to add to that, I had that takeaway as well because it's so similar to, like, again, Crime 101, which is like, you get so caught up chasing a dream, you forget to be happy, you forget to find a good point to get out of doing these things. But yeah, like I would say very similarly, I don't think it's boring either. Like that's the thing. If it was so heavy-handed, which I agree it could be and was, if it was boring and it was just 90% voiceover, being like, "I never had enough. My mom's poor." They do that, but like if you didn't have Topher Grace playing an evangelical Bible clout chaser, holding a katana to the character's neck, monologuing, if you didn't have the kind of supporting cast to fill in those kind of like cliches to be funny in those moments that again might feel derivative, I think it wouldn't have landed so highly for me because I think like Shea, like my guard is up when it's like something being overwhelmingly mediocre. But I think there's just enough. Like I also don't disagree with the review of it. It's mid plus. I think kind of as we talked about in like the one Redditor video, it's like my bar is so low, this felt really good. And I think if your bar is high, it'll fall short. And I think describing that to a general audience, trying to figure out if it's worth spending money to see it, buying a ticket, whatever, I definitely think it's very accessible and enjoyable. And it doesn't, it doesn't fall flat often. But I think if you're a cinephile, you would want more out of it because everything was there. Could have tweaked a few things because yeah, I totally forgot about the pastor being the narrative device where he's monologuing to him about how he wound up in the situation. And when they tie it in the end of the second act where it's like now in real time dealing with the fallout of the actions of the movie, all that stuff, it was tropey and I didn't find that interesting. And I even rolled my eyes at the start because I knew how
Me
you felt
too.
about it going in and I was like, oh no, here we go. Here's like, let me tell you about, but somewhere in the middle of the movie, I was like, oh, they're doing enough to make this not mid to bad. They're doing enough to make it enjoyably good, but also another word for good enough is mediocre. So I do get it, but I think with the themes being more particular to me, like Crime 101, I was like, oh, I really like the idea of the endless American dream chasing, causing more turmoil for a character who could have found happiness at many different points. I did find it funny because like in the last movie we discussed like the ending being a bummer. And this movie tries to have a bummer ending with a wink at the camera, like, see, wasn't what the real jail was being rich, and it didn't land nearly as hard. Because I think at the end of the day, it's just like it felt not like they were trying to wrap it up quick, but it felt like they were trying to give a sting a little unearnedly, a little too quickly. Even if it thematically lines up, I too with the ending was a little bit like, oh, that's it. Like and there could have been darker humor there where it's like if he told the uncle who he had a good relationship with, oh, I killed the rest of the family. And he was like, oh, that's hilarious. Don't worry, we'll pay them off. Like they could have been more diabolically rich or had some different beats, or maybe more of a twist of the knife, as they would say. I do think it was lacking in some areas that would have elevated it, but I don't think it was lacking to the point where I would give it below, like you said, mid plus, I think is fair. I just happen to connect and like with it more in the time and the mindset and the substances I enjoyed for this movie. So I totally get that.
I will say I think the pacing of this was not solid either. And I think part of it is that narrative framing of like, let me tell you a story. And for more than an hour and a half, he tells that story. We conclude that story. And then now we have like a whole other act of, now that we've caught up to that story and you've accomplished it, now where does it go from here? And it felt like, okay, now we have this like epilogue almost to the main story that extends out. And so I did feel, not to a dramatic sense, like this wasn't an iron lung situation. But
don't you dare. I can't mentally handle more feedback on the iron lung.
But
the furry community will be outraged by your statements.
But I did feel a little bit of this kind of, as we were getting to the end again, and where again it feels like a little less interesting to me, like I'm not as hooked by what kind of is happening. And again, like I just felt like maybe on paper, sure, it's fair to say, and this is why I don't like assessing movies this way anymore, is better, like more competently made, for example. But I definitely wouldn't say I had a better time with this movie than I did with like Anyone But You. Definitely Running Man, probably. But like I don't think I would definitely revisit that rom-com before I ever thought about rewatching this. And I like,
That's
again,
crazy to me.
Oh,
no,
like there was
funny.
nothing about this to me that makes it fun and rewatchable, or to that level. Like at least again, a rom-com is a particular mood. Like you can always be like, I just want to watch a fun little like rom-com, like hot people being hot and Glenn Powell rizzing up, like that's fine, and that gave me that energy.
Sydney Sweeney at the beach.
Yeah, exactly. Like
you avoided saying it. I got to put it out there.
I think is like a bit like I could revisit that, but I would never care to put this movie back on. And like even again from its like this story, like it's not that the movie does, I won't say it tries to present itself as incredibly clever or whatever. It doesn't, but it does try to present this like, well, remember, I told you that this is a tragedy. And so to have him get arrested for the crazy ex or whatever's like husband's death and all this, like that
was a fake out
whole
altogether.
tacked on ending was just annoying to me and obvious. And like, yeah, she's been permeated throughout this entire movie of like weird shit. You oddly enough, why did he hold the letter opener in that office? Like and then when he slid it, I thought that was weird. And then it's like, oh, it's okay because this is all going to be related. There's something here. And then
letter opener.
Exactly. And
or is it Schrodinger's letter opener?
Oh no, you read the comments. Don't at me.
But yeah, like, so I just like, again, like if that was a more interesting twist, like if that was handled in a way that felt more like, again, not to keep comparing it because I watched it like a week afterwards, but to The Gentleman, where the tacked on ending of that is what you think is kind of treated as a bit more of a throwaway bit. It's not that this character has permeated throughout the whole story and you know that this is getting brought back in somehow. So I don't know, like, again, like I watched it. I had a okay enough time and I never would care to see this again. And that bums me out because I really want, like, again, this Glenn Powell stuff. Like he is capable of a lot, but he's on a run of like movies that are at best okay or fine. And I really want that kind of next level piece here, whether it is like a better blockbuster, for example, than we got with Running Man, or like a better version of this movie that is just a little more than kind of like, it's weird that this was distributed by A24 for me, because it's like
Oh, I didn't even clock
conceptually,
that. That's actually
I'm pretty
wild.
sure it was, but
Yeah.
conceptually this is a kind of like what you would have gotten in those 90s 2000s, of like a mid-budget sort of not that it had that budget, but like a $70 million, like, and a lot of people, because it is a bit more accessible and whatnot. But like it just like, it feels like it's in this weird kind of purgatory and all, in like every regard, where again, except where, again, to its credit, like they even spliced in, I think it was like VHS, like home video footage kind of shots at points. Like, it did have a little bit more sauce in that sense than a lot of movies, again, that I would give this sort of feeling and rating to. But yeah, come on, Glenn, let's
Maybe he's got to stop trying to do like leading man type roles. I feel like he should
Mm.
just go weirder and do like more indie stuff and more like character
If he was the
stuff.
stepdad in a romantic thriller, I would buy in immediately for sure. Definitely.
Well, like, that was the whole thing, like, so again, because I'm so ingrained in the Top Gun Maverick of all of this, right? But like, that was like, he rejected that movie initially because he didn't get the rooster role, like he didn't get the lead role, and that was the Tom Cruise line. I think they've told this story. I don't know where it came from exactly, but like, I don't pick good movies, kid. I pick good roles. And then that was kind of the thing that enticed him back. Like, let us make this a good role. And he shines in that movie. Like, again, like, he
Yeah.
is, when I first watched that, and as it goes, like, he is the character that I like the most. Like, I have the most fun when he's there and on screen. And like, I understand career wise or whatever else, like all the reasons you would want to be presenting yourself as a leading man. But yeah, like, I
Well,
really wish I could be more enthusiastic about the movies he's in, not necessarily the roles he's playing.
super like tangent on that too. I also liked him the most in that movie for the same reasons, I guess. This and Crime 101. He was a standout for the backstory being as rich as the subtext that I found in the movie. Rooster, being the main character, is controversial to a Top Gun narrative. Rooster isn't giving main character energy. The Hangman gives main character energy with Glenn Powell, but he gets benched so they can have a more fulfilling arc and tie back. So it's funny you say that, because like I have always been like, yeah, dude, Hangman's the Maverick of 2020, getting benched to tell a overarching narrative in this IP, which I really loved. And on that note, I would say I said this in the Scream review about audiences aging differently than franchises, and not even franchise specific to this, but I would say like I think like what you were saying, this fits right in with like a decent 90s kind of like comedy thriller, or crime thriller, comedy crime thriller. However, it's a hard movie to kind of pin down in some ways. But I do think like if this came out in like 1996, this would be, people would go like, oh, like How to Make a Killing with Glenn Powell from 96. Yeah. Like I think people maybe would have resonated or bought in better because like maybe the bar wasn't as high and audiences weren't as well trained. But I would agree. Yeah. And like in today's landscape, it just kind of serves as being a movie that's unoffensive, enjoyable, maybe not ultra rich. And I got to say, I love and hate when I enter a podcast recording and I come in off the top rope being like, I love this. And you're like, I didn't think it was bad. And, whatever your rating is, like, say numerically out of 5, if you're like at a 3 and I'm at a 4, I often feel like I end up coming out at like a 3.5 because I'm like, you're right. I actually can't passionately argue with anything you said almost the entire episode. Maybe you got a point there, because I would say similarly. I got home with this movie. I saw it alone, and I was like, "Oh, my girlfriend would love this. We love '90s, thriller, crime comedies, romance comedies, whatever. Like we've been on a huge run. I got to show her this. I'll pay to stream it as soon as it's out. Maybe I'll go back to the theater and bring her." But I was like, I don't know if I go back to the theater and revisit this. I would stream it on convenience, sure, but not like an A+ review like Sinners, where I brought everybody I knew to the theater the week after seeing it so I could see it again and share it with people. So there is a huge key difference in like an exceptional recommendation versus just like a general one. And I do respect that. Um, super similarly, when you brought up you'd revisit Anyone But You before The Running Man. hard agree. Running Man, I don't think I've ever been like, I got to show you the Running Man on streaming. But that's the disagree there is I would equally recommend this with anyone but you for the similar reasons. It's tropey. It's exactly as advertised. But when you know the person or the person's your like significant other, it's a really easy recommend and you want to share that like popcorn feel good feeling. So maybe still not as critical, but I can't disagree with the thing you said, which bothers me on a fundamental level. Uh, but yeah, I'm not sure if there's much more I could say about this other than talking about, you talked about could be more clever. I really love being so dependent on my phone and having a diabolical screen time, being bombarded by ads. And I would say there was some ads for this movie. I saw one trailer and I thought, oh, that feels like they're trying to do a American Psycho type thing. So I was bought in enough on that. But some of the social media ads on this, they're like, Beckett Redfellow is willing to kill his entire family for, and it's 28 billion is the number. But the marketing's like, 28 billion, that's worth 60 years of Super Bowl ads. It's worth, was this, 14 Eras tours, like the Taylor Swift Eras tour. 14 of those cost 28 billion. It's worth 28 Mona Lisas. So I thought that was funny in a way where it's like, when this kid has been promised, 18 super yachts, or I think it was like 40 miles of Ferraris in gridlock traffic worth of money. I thought that was clever and funny on a marketing standpoint. And I think anytime I see a movie outside the theater promoting it, not necessarily trailers, because trailers are kind of the root of all evil to a lot of people, and I could see that, but seeing kind of some alternative marketing to get you thinking about it, or like, oh, that's fun math, like if I was
What
a
are
better
the odds
podcast
that
host.
Instagram knows Brandon so well that they're just like, hey, if we can convince this guy this is about a poor guy trying to get rich, Brandon will pay to go to this movie. So
Absolutely. I tried to get my my buddy to go see this on like a Tuesday night or something, and he was just like, I don't know, man, I heard it's mid. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I know it's going to be kind of mid, but like I'm hyped because I've been indoctrinated through the almighty Black Mirror here. So yeah, no, I got to take a moment to shout it out because I do think it's really fun and important. Because there's a lot of movies that we've talked about where it's like, I didn't even know that came out. I'm somebody who pays attention to movies and I still don't know when something comes out. And as much as overhyping is a crime, I do think it's fun and important when a studio, or at least the intern running the social media, gets kind of the bit, like to have fun with it and put it in people's minds. That meme alone, I was already committed to seeing the movie, obviously, so we could discuss it. But I definitely saw that meme and I was like, that's clever. I really like that. I got to talk about that because, yeah, I would kill my whole bloodline for 40 miles worth of Ferraris. I'd do it for a mile of Ferraris. I would do it for one Eras tour, of course. Yeah, he's so relatable.
You gotta learn to dream small.
Yeah, Brandon, calm down.
Appreciate
dude.
what you have.
On
I
that
just want
note,
this video to
put
get 100
that chain
views.
back around your neck and put a ball gag in your mouth, and let's give Adriana the last word before we go to our closer.
Oh God.
We're getting kinky.
I mean, I did disagree with some of the things you said, Shea, and I still do. Like, I think there is some merit to this movie. But maybe that's just I liked Emily the Criminal so much that I'm like trying to carry that goodwill forward because I do think that movie was better than this. And I don't know. I'm glad that this director is like branching out into different things, and overall I thought it was really like enjoyable. One thing we didn't talk about, I will say, Shea, you said Margaret Qualley wasn't very good in this, but I thought she was like having a ton of fun just like chewing the scenery.
Yeah,
and I
chewing the
really
scenery
liked
is a good way to put
her
it.
in it as the sort of like vampish like rich girl who's coming for Glenn Powell's fortune.
She was definitely giving Cruel Intentions vibes, like I'm a rich girl to
Yeah.
ruin your life with your sexual desires, which again, 90s thriller for my household. We've been on that. We just watched that. I was like,
I
evoking that.
love
So
Cruel
I agree.
Intentions. What a
Oh
great
yeah.
movie.
It's my girlfriend's favorite movie of all time, funny enough.
So yeah, final word, I don't know, give this movie a chance. It's not bad. It's fun. Especially if you're not sick of like all the rich people movies and commentary, then I
That's a
think
big
you'll really
factor.
enjoy it. If you're a little like, okay, I've had enough, I get it, maybe you won't enjoy it as much. But yeah.
Conversely, if you're also like, yeah, I do hate the rich. I
Brandon, where
love
did the ball
repeating that
gag go?
message.
We said Adriana
Oh,
gets the last
sorry.
word.
Oh,
Jesus.
you're right. Sorry, Alexander Skarsgård. Hold that key up. Let people know you've had the key
I've
around
had the
my neck
key
this
the
whole
whole
time.
time, dude. Well, you ruined the illusion because you unlocked your friggin' chain. Anyway, it's high production values here at the Screen Love Affair podcast. No, I will say I don't have a good closer bit about theater etiquette, but partly because I've been getting in a habit of sitting a little closer than I normally do. And that's been bearing good fruit. So my PSA is to anyone listening, I don't need to tell you to not pull your phone at the theater because you know that by now. But what I will say is if you are bothered by that, give yourself an opportunity to sit a little closer, and I think you'll like it, and there will not be as many distractions that you'll notice.
Ball gags out. I gotta say to hyper focus on that. If you are unsure of how close is too close, I've been doing row C a lot lately in a non IMAX AVX screening, regular screening. Row C, 3 up from that like walkable aisle in front of the screen. Pretty good. You get the illusion of the movie being big, grander than life, which is the cinema experience. Far better than like row F, where it looks like a big flat screen TV on the far side of the room.
Every
That's all I
movie's a
gotta say.
Screen X movie if you go to row C.